So when John and I have done fall programs for years, and partly we love each other. We're really different from each other. We learn from each other, and we also like to stir the pot. And when we were talking about what we would do this year, John actually suggested Bodhisattva's activism without, it's almost prescient of you. John and Dekila are both at the University of Wisconsin in Madison, and have many overlaps in terms of the work that they do. So John and Dekila and I are old friends. We've stirred, many pots together in Dharamsala and in Madison and in here around her extraordinary work as an environmental activist. But little did we know that we would be not only in the climate crisis, but that Ukraine would be continuing its terrible battle, and now the Mideast, and 30 other wars, in addition to what's happening in Palestine or Gaza and Israel and Ukraine and Russia. It's just staggering to consider the magnitude of suffering. As we sit here in this beautiful place, resourced to the degree that we are as individuals and as a community, and also knowing that the rapidity, the velocity of change that's happening in terms of our climate is way beyond the predictions of scientists over even the past few years. I mean, it is a staggering time we are in, and that we have the opportunity to, in these next hours together, to actually look deeply at what in Buddhism allows us to feel confident as practitioners engaging in activism, and also what views in social psychology and neuroscience, which John is going to be sharing with us, allows us the opportunity to see things through how the mind, in the context of our lived experience, how this mind operates. And John's going to be speaking to some extent about the role of emotion, which is really important because I have lots of it. Maybe some of you know. No, not you. Or you. You have three upregulated individuals here. I have to. This is not the breathe and smile crowd here. This is like the saber rattling group, all three of us. But seriously, what we hope to do is to not just be, in our data and in the histories of our traditions, but also, to really move into questions that you have. And actually, we were discussing some things in the faculty room in preparation for in relation to what we're doing today. Right before we walked in here, we were talking about forgiveness. It's very interesting. So, I'm sure we will get into exploring what forgiveness means in the context of a Buddhist view. How does it operate in the world today? Or compassion, which is something that all three of us have very strong perspectives on, and that it's not just this fuzzy blanket kind of thing. And so forth. The Buddhist perspective on compassion is very, very articulated. So what I'd love us to do right now is I'm going to ask Dekila first, and then John, and then I will talk a little bit about our background as academics, social activists, and so on, not too long. And then we, want to actually turn to some questions, like, what is really, in the foreground of your churning at this time. You know, what you are caring about or concerned about will actually shape the direction that we take over this time. And we're going to do that first with our online community. And actually, no, what I think I'll do is open my computer, but turn my sound off. Is that right? Can I do that? Yeah. And maybe you can actually and then to pull some similar content from our on-site community, which will give Dekila and John and I a kind of geography that will allow us to pull, you know, from as we begin to unfold what we're going to be presenting. So my beloved old friend, Dekila.
Hello, everyone. I'm so happy to be here. This is a reunion. It's such a blessing for me that it's now turning into an annual reunion for us. So my background, I'm an environmental scientist. My background was conservation biology. And I come from the Himalayas, and I come from a community which is very nature oriented. So it was no surprise to anyone that I became an environmentalist. But in around mid-2000s, I started experiencing what we now know is called eco-anxiety and climate distress. And at that time, there were no words. People thought we were exaggerating our emotions, you know, and the trauma that people in the front lines were carrying. And it sort of catapulted me into working with faith leaders around the world. So I ended up working with religions all over the world, East Africa, Amazon, US, other places. And then in the process, really began examining the nature of what this trauma is, this divide that we have with nature as human beings, and this sort of the displacement we've experienced as a species on the planet that we live in. And from that, I have two things that I'm really excited to share. One of which is that we really have to center joy in the work we do, no matter what that looks like, no matter what that form of activism is. And the other part that I'm just more and more sort of grateful for and convinced about is that the earth wants us to thrive. That we as a human species, the earth actually loves us actively and wants us to thrive. And that this narrative where we are sort of the pest and we're the bad guys, we really have to work on this. There's a lot of healing that has to be done. So I'm very excited to talk about taking refuge from a Buddhist perspective in the Three Jewels, but then how do we interpret that when we think about interdependence? And then what does that mean if the earth is alive? How do we learn to take refuge again in the earth? So that is part of what I'm going to talk about tomorrow. And then I think the other part that I'm supposed to talk about is just how hard it is to deal with discomfort, how terrifying impermanence is and uncertainty is. And so how do we, as Buddhists or practitioners or meditators, how do we get comfortable with these emotions? So that's kind of my big picture, but very adaptable. So if there's something you want me to emphasize, something you want me to go over, some other topic you think is much more relevant, I'm really adaptive and here to listen and offer what I can. Thank you.
Thank you, Dekila. John.
So it's a pleasure to be here with both of you. It's really quite a nice reunion, I must say. Even though Dekila and I are both the Center for Healthy Minds, we don't always get to see each other that much. So it's really a delight to spend some time together. And of course, always with my dear Roshi. Some of you may know me or have heard some of what I've done before here or in other places, but I am at the Center for Healthy Minds and also the Department of Asian Languages and Cultures at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And I have a sort of hybrid academic identity, I suppose you could say. On the one hand, I sort of do straight up classical Buddhist studies, which was my original training, but then starting around 2000, I began to collaborate with scientists to study the effects of meditation practices, contemplative practices, like compassion practices, mindfulness, and so on, their effects on mind and body. So now I guess I'm sort of a Buddhist cognitive scientist. It's a strange identity, but that's, what I've been called. So I suppose I'll take that moniker. And part of why I wanted to talk about this topic is in a way, you could think of the Bodhisattva path as activism. Like the Bodhisattva is the paradigmatic activist. And part of what I sort of want to encourage us is the notion of our own, how activism can be the Bodhisattva activism can be a concrete part of our everyday lives. And that it's in some ways a matter not just of what we do, but of the mindset that we bring to our activities, even in our everyday lives. In concrete ways, I've been involved in various types of what looked like activism over the years. Buddhist Peace Fellowship many, many years ago, actually 40 years ago. Wow, when I was 1 month old. No, I'm kidding. And yeah, in like 1982, and issues around homelessness were something that I worked quite a lot on, actually in a similar period of time. I've also more recently, there's other things I've dabbled in, but more recently, I've really been trying to work in ways that are quite difficult at the university to promote student flourishing and to really focus on not just the intellectual cultivation of our students, but actually helping them to be better people, and especially to deal with the incredible mental health crisis that we've been facing on campus. So part of what you'll hear me talk about is coming out of that experience working with students, something that we really, I just can't imagine how hard it is to be a 20-year-old right now, to be perfectly frank. And it's a really not an easy world to be in at that age. So, part of my activism right now is just for those young people to really bring our attention to them and to help them to not just grow, but to flourish in these very difficult circumstances. And as Roshi said, I will speak a little bit about, you could say, in broad terms, it'll be wisdom and compassion. What a surprise in a Buddhist talk, And it'll be sort of wisdom from an ultimate perspective, which will be mostly about our view and how we hold our view, so to speak. What is our sense even of reality, of right and wrong? And what is the ultimate perspective? How does that inform that? And then in more conventional terms, I actually will turn a little bit to some you could say cognitive scientific or psychological insights, also coming from Buddhism, about the role of emotions in our actions, and especially relevant, we're engaged in what we can think of as activism, as trying to make a difference, trying to change something that is, let's say, a matter of injustice, the key role that our emotions can play in that context, and then also the role that our communal identities, our group identities, our sense of who we are with others, how that also is really important, but also in some ways sometimes really dangerous. And I may kind of get into a little bit about a certain kind of political activism I was involved in many years ago. We'll see if I have the guts to talk about it, but so we'll see about that. But in any case, yeah, I know that was dumb of me, wasn't it? But you Jeremy. So we'll see. But in any case, it's a real pleasure to be back here in Upaya, to be here with all the residents, with Noah and everybody. So I'm really happy. And many of you I've known before, and happy to see you and make some new friends. So great to be here.
Thanks, John, so much. I feel a lot of gratitude for being in a place of practice at this time on our earth. It's a long arc or a long road that I've traveled. Most of you know I turned 81 last summer, and that meant that I was alive during the 60s, if you do any math. So, and that meant it was not only drug, sex, and rock and roll, which was certainly formative in terms of one's experience, but also the political atmosphere of that time was so radicalized. And it was highly polarized. And I felt very congruent with that polarization. And it had to do with violence, both related to racial violence, which was part of my upbringing. I was brought up in a restricted community where Jews were not even permitted to live in our neighborhood. We looked at Catholics with suspicion. I was just like, ay, ay, ay. People with darker skin lived literally on the other side of the railroad tracks, and came into our communities to mow the lawn and to make beds. And that picture that I had growing up was so disturbing to me. For some weird reason, I had a sense of justice from a very young age, partly because I think I was very ill as a child. And I was taken care of, as many of you know, by this incredible woman whose mother had been a slave. So, that experience was formative. And I have to say, I feel accompanied by that woman named Lila, for now 76 years. She entered my life when I was 4 and so sick. The sense of justice has stayed with me in terms of, how important practice has been as a guide in relation to not only is what John was addressing in terms of the transformation of states of mind that were afflictive in my experience as a justice advocate, as a nonviolent person, or a person who was deeply involved in the anti-war movement, has stayed that way since the mid-60s. And that sensibility of not just using my practice as a way to bypass the truth of suffering by saying it's all emptiness and the truth of impermanence prevails. That's all true. But the truth on the other side of that equation is that there is suffering, that there are harms, that there are responsibilities in relation to those harms, which have to be addressed. And that we as human beings with the capacity to have not only intentions to end harm, but have access to our motivations, which are often at the preconscious level, not available to us. And so what practice does is it turns up the inauthenticity that we're operating out of, where our motivation actually is coming from the base of an ego that is we're defining and defending constantly. So Buddhism is a fantastically powerful vehicle for us addressing the issues that we're experiencing in our world around, for example, our climate catastrophe. We do not call it climate change. It is a catastrophe. And we have to be very careful and conscientious about our terminology. We also have to understand that our terminology around the violence of war, we have to be very conscientious about just saying, I stand, and I often say this, I stand with peace. Well, you need to stand with a few other things too, in our opinion, as a Buddhist practitioner, from the point of view of responsibility and accountability. And so what I'm going to try to do as an old social justice and environmental justice person, and forgive me because as John and Dekila both, we're 3 emotional types, okay? I think you kind of get the feeling already. We're not going to just, we're not emptiness heads. Although I do quote the Vajracharika, quite often, but I don't live in the Vajracharika. I actually live in the Four Noble Truths. So what I hope to do tomorrow is to, in the very first session, I will do it poorly, is to actually, starting with the Jataka tales and going up to Bhikkhu Analayo. How's that? He's a Jataka tale to himself. But anyway, I want to paint the arc of Buddhism in terms of looking at Buddha and Buddhism, but Buddha particularly as a social reformer, and also what we have in the Buddhist context that allows us to actually engage in actions related to structural and direct violence. And I want to sort of build the case for a revision of Buddhism based on a misunderstanding that many white Western Buddhists have been caught in, that Buddhism is an apolitical platform. It's highly political, and the Buddha was totally politically involved. And we should be too, is my opinion. That's just my opinion. So that's one piece that I really would like us to get into, and it might end up in a book, because I kind of dug into this pretty deeply. And then the other piece has to do with vows. What does it mean to live by vow? And I want to more go deeper into this articulation between what is motivation and what is intention. And so, to make that distinction clear to us from a Buddhist perspective, and to understand that our work and practice is actually to surface or access our actual motivation. Because many people who have intention that is articulated as beneficial actually have a motivation which is very ego-based. And that's a tough attitude to be sharing in such a nice environment. But I want to hold the mirror up and ask us to look. So just to say that our schedule, we're so grateful that John on Saturday morning, tomorrow morning, and Sunday morning will be doing his outrageous guided meditation. So don't miss. You guys don't miss wherever you are in the world. Please understand that that's all part of the thing. And that we also, our schedule is there on the resource page, and you all have the schedule. We ask for you to come a few minutes before meditation and a few minutes before the session so we can begin on time. So before we turn over to kind of talk about what's in your foreground in relation to this issue of activism in our time, I want to ask if you have any questions about what we're going to be turning with, I should say. No questions? Okay.
Oh, the 1960s, right on.
Thank you, Catherine. I often say, and I'll say it, I was born for this time. I feel so alive at the age of 81. But I do have to take naps. So my aliveness is enhanced by, leave me alone and let me, don't bother me in the afternoon. But anyway, I will show up for the afternoon session. Good. Well, hi, wonderful people. I see you on the screen there, but I've got a closer view of you, and I see, actually, Sue, you're in New Zealand. Nice to see you. Wonderful. Yes, Sue just waved. And Helen in Washington, D.C. And hi, Tim, from our chaplaincy training. Wow, Eric, I'm glad you got online. Well, okay. What I'd love you to do is for us to put open the chat. Is our chat stream open? Okay. And now how do I find? Thank you. Great. So what I want us to do is ask our online bodhisattvas to, or dakas and dakinis, our angels, what are you turning with in terms of what's happening in the world today and in your life? And I'm going to start sharing some of those pieces, and I'll ask you to say some of those pieces so we can hear your voice. And then I want to turn to our community here. So if you would please put into the chat, what's up for you right now in terms of what's happening in the world? And please also direct it toward everyone, not toward, it's.
Yeah, we don't have the chat on this.
Yeah.
Here yet. Chat is blank here. Go, I think.
Okay.
Yep, there it is.
Okay.
Good.
Great.
We're good.
Donna says shalom to all. Yeah. So Rich's now, Israel, Gaza, and plus the upcoming elections. And then very much what John has said about students. Regina is, hi, Regina, so nice to see you. Be in touch. Teaching at NYU, the students are just totally overwhelmed. And that is true in this country. And I know also because Wendy and I just came back from Japan last month. It's very true in the Japanese context. And then Linda, sorrow in response to intractable violence, and us being exposed to that violence. You can just barely stand to access the images of people who are suffering. So Christine, I really love what you said. You said, Christine's an educator, old friend of ours, the need for a compassionate education. How important that is. And Christian, thank you, who's in Germany right now, sitting with the dying. Challenged, says our good friend Helen, by the necessity to endure endless suffering in the world. How do we carry what is happening and not collapse under the weight of it? Kathy, the frustration and heartache of decay, falling apart of climate and war. And Julia, sadness about the disconnect from the living planet, the harm to land, animals, pollution in water, in the air. And then Ang says, feeling helpless. I think many of us can understand that, the magnitude. I mean, if we really open our eyes to what's happening, just watching what's happening in Israel, Palestine, the magnitude of that suffering and feeling helpless, what in the heck can we do? Well, Josie Omar says, the agony of being in a family of Christians, Muslims, and Jews. And Lynn says, increasing inequality. And Sono says, supporting activists in my practice as a therapist. How do we actually create the means for those who are on the so-called front lines who are standing up, speaking truth to power. How do we support them? We owe coming together as beloved community to hold violence and hatred against queer, trans, and gender non-conforming communities. This is a critical issue, and also, you know, for me as a woman, in terms of women's bodies and the bodies of those who are non-binary, and protecting our bodies from violence. Wow, excuse me, there is a lot. Well, this is Lauren. She says, I'm confused about the work for peace. I support Ukraine fully. The Israel-Gaza conflict feels equally catastrophic, but it's not so easy to choose a side. Does anybody have that? You know what I'm saying? It's interesting how I know in terms of Ukraine, many of us feel very identified with, you know, the aspiration for Ukraine to win, so to speak. And yet, it's less easy to choose a side in this Middle East for many people. Not everybody, but for many.
Even knowing what winning means is very hard.
That's what I was thinking.
Well, this is Madrone. So nice that you're here, and you were just here. Trying to appreciate my privileges and joys while witnessing the complete opposite and horrors of racism, environmental degradation, trans and LGBT hate, ethnic genocide in Palestine, and the list goes on and on. That is a powerful question. I'm going to, just for the sake of our time, just what I want to do is to ask you online, and I really thank you for articulating so much. I'm going to ask you to just keep that list going. We'll put that on the resource page so that all of us can access. But I want to open it up now to our community here on site. And I'm going to just call out, if you don't mind. I'm going to actually, Marina, knowing how jet lagged you are.
And if everyone can use this mic when they speak, so the online community
Marina,
can hear.
What are you turning with?
Turning with, well, I work in development, international development, and, you know, just from a sort of big development donor perspective, how do we actually shine the spotlight on the people, the millions, billions of people who are just struggling to survive, that are feeling the impacts of climate change, yet they're not the largest emitters of climate change. So how can we actually shift the focus from, you know, really to the most local level, and local community, engaging communities. And like you said, Roshi, like here we sit in this beautiful Zendo, all warm, you know, all sort of like charged up to do something. How can we act to help or to serve at the most local levels? That's what I'm turning with.
So forgive me for doing this to you.
Yeah.
This is really unfair to a person who's totally jet lagged. But
I feel great being here. So thank you.
Yeah, I have such respect for the work you do and the communities that you're working with in different parts of the world. Mm-hmm. I'm curious what you see. Just going briefly.
I see people in their communities working to support their communities.
Yeah.
And they need very little, they don't need $1 million projects. You know, what they need are like systems to change, like global systems, the global economic systems to change. They need governments that govern with local population and human rights in mind. They need good governance. They need just, I would say, just more of a focus on seeing them. They need to be seen and heard. And heard is key.
Yeah. Do you mind saying what company you work for? So to speak?
Yeah, sure. The U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID.
So USAID. So Marina's got her, you worked around the whole issue of justice in relation to those who fish in the world.
Yes.
You
yes.
want to just say a little tiny
Yes. Mainly migrant workers who, for example, are catching fish, doing a lot of the distant water fishing. I think maybe some of you have seen some reports about seafood slavery, the plight of these workers that are really sometimes on vessels for years at a time because they're in conditions of forced labor. And essentially the issue has to do with their migrant worker status, that they really don't have. They're from very vulnerable populations, poor countries, and are unethically recruited, labor on these fishing vessels without pay, very dangerous conditions, and they're not seen and they're not heard. So that's really, I guess my mantra is really looking at people where they're at, all the workers in the world, you know, in agriculture, construction, all the people that make our clothes, produce our food, like really see them, see them. And from where I work on labor rights. And so it's all about labor rights and decent work for all people without exception, for everyone without exception.
Thank you. Thank you for the work that you do. It is courageous and complex. But what Marina is reflecting here is so important because these are communities that need to be seen. And
seen and heard and respected.
And respected.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, thank you for shining a spotlight on that.
Barbara. Also probably jet lagged from Switzerland. Sorry.
Thank
Just
you.
asking people to speak to her.
Thank you. I didn't expect to say something right now, but I was deeply reflecting on what you asked. And what I feel is forgetfulness. We truly, truly forget who we truly are. I just came about 10 days ago from Tanzania. I had the opportunity to go to the origins of some of the human origins there. And I had 2 incredible days. I really feel privileged to spend 2 days with Hadzabe tribe, which are hunter-gatherers. I went hunting with them and I spent an evening with them in a camp, and I'm still digesting all of that. Really, I felt all my ancestral cellular memory was awakening, that we can live so much closer together with not only each other, but with the nature, with the cosmos. And I felt completely attuned. And it was so beautiful what Dekila said. It was full of joy. These wonderful people, they live in a world with it looks to me, it looked like complete scarcity, yet their mindset is they live in abundance. And every moment was full of joy and storytelling. And I said, wow, what happened to us? How do we bring this forgetfulness? What do we do? So thanks for asking.
Thanks, Barbara, so
Thank
much.
you.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Let's have someone from over in this quarter of our community. Yapchi. Yeah.
I look around the Zendo tonight, and I'm an old timer here, and I haven't been here since COVID, and I'm seeing so many new faces. But there are a few things that go on in my mind. Number
I'm going
one,
to just stop you for a minute. How to hold the mic so that we're not.
okay. If you practice, if you are a practicing Buddhist, and if you really take seriously like your commitment and the paramitas and the precepts, all of the things that you stand for, I find there's not a way not to be an activist. I think it just, your heart breaks all the time. And I too am 81, will be 81 in January. And I find like I'm in a vacuum because I come up with all these ideas, and I'm desperate for the young people right here in town who are in their teens but kill themselves and kill each other and kill their babies and all of that. And I feel for the animals that don't know what's going on in the Arctic, and their worlds are going apart. And I have so many ideas that I want to work with, but I'm in a vacuum because I just don't know where to go first. And wherever I've gone, nobody wants me because I'm 81. You know,
There's nothing wrong with 81.
But they calculate how old you are. And if a 40-year-old comes in and you're 80, and they say, well, you know, I calculated you graduated in 1966. That's really, I don't think you belong anywhere. So I'm struggling with where to go and what to do with my energy, which is very strong, like yours, Roshi. I feel very strongly about everything, and I have CNN, and I have the or what is the other news? But you just see everything. You see the children and the families and the destitution of Gaza and Israel and all.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's all.
No, it's not all. You know, I first of all, we don't practice strong ageism here. So I want to get that out of the way. You can be very young here, you can be very old, but we love you no matter what. And we got plenty of work to do. So, feel free to come here and volunteer anytime.
Yeah, I'm looking.
Yeah.
But the other thing I just wanted to say, when I was practicing with Thich Nhat Hanh, the fifth precept had to do, in the Panchasila, in old time Buddhism is like don't drink alcohol, and anyway, so I won't.
You want to drink, Roshi? Is that it?
No. But anyway, so when I was practicing with Thai, he transformed that fifth precept. It was very interesting. And the sort of early version of it was, of not taking intoxicants, whether it was, like alcohol, drugs, or whatever, but it also include movies, magazines, and so on and so forth. So what makes an intoxicant? Really, it depends on the individual. And I'm just reflecting this back to us because, you know, we can actually find ourselves in a certain way being morbidly high over the quantity of suffering that we allow ourselves to access. And so it becomes a real toxin for us.
It's called doom scrolling.
Yeah, doom scrolling. But I remember Chagdu Tulku Rinpoche, when I was practicing with him many years ago, he used to say, you know, he would watch television, the worst stuff on television at all possible, because it allowed him to really strengthen his compassion practice. So, you know, these are two things that I think are important, is to know what your threshold is and to be conscientious about it. Because you can be completely undercut or drained or sent into futility and despair because you are attracted in a way that you aren't conscientious about in relation to the content that you're exposing yourself to. And so I just want to say, be careful. But to also understand that it is important that you take some poison. You absolutely have to have the right amount of poison to enhance your immune system, so to speak. Everybody who got vaccinated for COVID or flu took some poison to produce an immune response, which was not about bypassing, but was enhancing one's resilience and immune system. So part of what Buddhist practice is about is actually having that kind of conscientiousness in relation to, you know, the narratives that we generate that are undercut our capacity to meet the world wholly. And with a WNH, so to speak, if you know what I'm saying. So I just want to reflect that to you, Yapji, because I completely agree. It is, you know, I also know as a woman, an 81-year-old woman, there are biases thrown at me all the time. Even Noah has doubted my capacity to actually judge the speed of the website. But I happen to have been sitting next to an engineer from Google, which he didn't realize because we were on the iPhone and I was complaining. I said, perhaps you'd like to talk with Mang about this. And then he agreed. Anyway, so I teased him unmercifully about ageism and gender bias. But anyway, you know, we've got to get out of these narratives. And because they depotentiate us. Your wisdom is needed. The wisdom of everybody here is needed, no matter what our age is. So go for it.
No, I see that because sometimes I just say I can't watch it, and I jump up and I turn it off.
Good, you should.
I like this show.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but
No, but we have to understand, you know, how much is okay for us.
Yeah.
I mean, really, and be conscientious about it. But I thank you. Okay, and you know, I'm very straightforward, so forgive me. Okay, let's hear from one more person, and then I'm going to ask John and Dekila to finish up. Yes, yes. Sorry, who is that? Tom. Hi, Tom. Nice to see you.
Thank you, Roshi. What's alive for me in churning is there's days I feel the flames of a wrathful deity just wanting to tear down the unjust systems and structures. But I'm not that. So I catch myself looking at Green Tara or Kuan Yin and trying to relieve that suffering right in front of me. But for me personally, I want to know what that next step is upstream to relieve the suffering. Thank you.
So I just want to recognize something that Tom, that you have suggested, and that is taking a nutrient in, if you will, that is wholesome in order to resource yourself. And that is one of the powerful things about practice. You know, the cultivation of an altruistic motivation of, you know, contemplating Avalokiteshvara or Green Tara, or
The
lineage, or Tutu, or His Holiness, or Thai, or Jane Goodall, you know, or Richard Attenborough, you know, of being very conscientious about having, taking in that which is, will resource you, so you can meet a world where actually we don't know what the next step is. You know? So Dekila, as we're coming to the final moments.
On our way here, John and I were talking about the difference between anger and wrath, and how absolutely necessary it is, you know, this idea of emotional granularity, where you can actually identify the emotion you're experiencing, not just sort of say, I'm feeling bad or I'm feeling terrible, but sort of being able to pinpoint it. Because in the times we're in, we have to first heal ourselves before we can heal others, right? And the importance of being able to recognize the emotion that is shutting down our entire nervous system. And in the moment, with the right motivation, transforming that emotion, right? Because there is such a strong difference between wrath and anger. And that difference really comes back down to who we're feeling compassion for. Is it for ourselves? Like, are we fixated, you know, feeling really sorry and trying to self-soothe? Or is it compassion for the world, right? And so we were having this conversation on our drive here, and even talking about whether we should include wrathful deities in the talk we want to do. So very prescient. I suppose what I'm really struck with is every time okay, let me pause for a second. The news is a business, right? War is a business, you know? Climate change is a business. People are profiteering the heck out of this stuff, right? Us coming together, that is local community building. And so even being able to see the sort of the venue that we're in, right? This in itself is activism, isn't it? This in itself, the choice that we're making to come together because we are compelled to heal these systems where other people are profiteering on the backs of immense unbearable suffering. That in itself is activism. So for anyone who's sitting here sort of going, you know, well, I'm overwhelmed, or I don't know where to begin, or I don't know where, we talk so much about skillful means. I don't know what the most skillful thing is to do. We've done it already. We gathered. That is the most skillful, compassionate thing we could be doing right now. And so I just want to offer that back online and to all of you.
Beautiful. John.
Well, I don't know what to say.
Are you feeling hemmed by two women?
There's, with so many things that have come up, I think that I just want to reiterate that idea that is really, I think, several people have touched on already, and you already just touched on, which is the thing that the Bodhisattva practice is an activism. And what is activism anyway? You know, sometimes we can really wear that. I've certainly been in quite literally wearing a kind of activist costume maybe I'll tell you about that too. Many years ago, it involved face paint, and so you can really like perform your activism, right? And then it can become a kind of identity. So what do we even really mean by activism? But you could say that one way to think about it is that it is being confronted with suffering and wanting to do something about it. And that is the Bodhisattva attitude, because of course we are caring for our own suffering, but the Bodhisattva attitude is that what we're most concerned with is the suffering of others, and we actually just can't help it. Like you just can't help it. That's what bodhicitta is like. You got to do something. So then the question is, what do we mean we got to do something? We have to change something. And so when we talk about change, what are we changing? Well, one of the main things we need to change is ourselves. All right? That's a key part of this. So not only gathering together here, but also gathering together with a commitment to personal transformation. Because, there's this idea actually in the works of Dharmakirti that if it's easy to take a very positive motivation and have a very negative outcome from it. That can have quite a lot. And I'll probably talk tomorrow about some very interesting cases, and maybe one case in particular of, unintended consequences, which in the development world is a well-known thing. And and how does that happen? That happens when we lack the wisdom. We are filled with the compassion, but we lack the wisdom. So part of what we need to do is just with that incredible, powerful feeling, like I got to do something. Well, part of what we have to do, which we can always do in every moment, is work on ourselves. Not just, to make ourselves feel better, but so that we are more effective. At what? So then the thing is, what are we changing? Like, basically, it's really the system, it's local. We're changing what's happening around us. But the final target is like, you could say the system. What system? It's called samsara. That's really like all of the different kinds of systems we talk about, whether they're the financial capitalist system, the systems that sort of inevitably produce international conflict, the trade in weaponry that is a multi-billion-dollar industry, hundreds of billion-dollar industry. Like what permits all of that in a way is a sort of the underlying system of samsara. So that's our target. That doesn't mean that we can't have those systems as targets, sort of sub-targets, so to speak. But we can just try to suppress one thing and another thing's going to pop up if we don't change the whole dynamic. So that's like really not what is it again? Something's endless and we vow to do something about it,
We'll shortly review that.
Yes. So yeah, it's like, yeah, we're crazy, maybe. But someone's got to do something. So that's our opportunity here, is to come together, to transform ourselves, and to get better at changing that system, which expresses itself in every corner of life, like in families, in neighborhoods, at the international level, in our politics, quite obviously. Good luck. Let us awaken, awaken, take heed. Do not squander.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, our online community. And we can join John tomorrow morning at 7 Mountain Time. Thank you, John and Dekila. I'm so happy we're together again. Okay.